Welcome to the Griefy Girls Book Club, where every month we dive into a griefy read. From memoirs to biographies to fantasy, romance, and beyond. If it touches on grief, it's fair game. We're your hosts. I'm Kendall Rogers.
And I'm Rachel Dwyer. You might know us from our podcast, Two Girls with Grief. For us, reading is both healing and a powerful way to explore grief. So we knew it was time to give it the attention it truly deserves. Join us as we unpack our favorite moments, chat about upcoming reads, and even host interviews with guest authors. And you can bet we'll be yapping about our ever-growing TBR piles too.
So, whether you're here for the books, the banter, or a little bit of both, we're so glad to have you with us. Let's read, reflect, and grow in our grief together.
Welcome to episode 2 of Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. We are going over chapters 13 through 24 today. But first, is there anything that you're reading right now that you've been enjoying?
What have I been reading right now? I've been reading Emma Cline's other book, The Girls, which is about like Charles Manson cults. It's a fictionalized version. And I just started it, so I'm not too deep in, but interesting. It's very like kind of weird girl fiction. But I think I'll like it. I think like the further I get into it, it'll get really good. But what about you?
I just finished 2 books, which is so funny. It's so different. But I read First Time Caller.
So these are your pick of the month books?
Yes. So this is one of them, and this was like a Valentine's Day read. And so I read this, and it's a romance book. It took me a second to really get into it, but I actually really enjoyed it. It was cute. So I appreciated this book. I would recommend. I don't know if I'd recommend to you, but I would recommend it. I'm also reading Nightshade, which is like enemies to lovers, young adult. They're in a like college, but they're not. They're like both older. They're like 21, 23, or 24. Kind of like enemies to lovers, slow burn type of romance, a little bit dark romance. But I saw it on TikTok, another like book that got me on TikTok. And I read it thinking like, oh, it's an old series, but it's like a 2-parter, and I didn't realize that. And so I read it and I was like, really? Pisses me off and it just says like it'll be out in 2025, and I'm like, 2025 when? And this book just came out in January.
So you'll be waiting for like a minute.
But some authors like release books really quickly, and it said that it was gonna come out also in 2025 at like the end of the Kindle read. So I was like, when though? And I checked her like Instagram, and I'm like, there's nothing. There's nothing on there.
That long like drag to keep you hooked.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to know. I
will say I started the book that you sent me. Either you sent me or it was in the book subscription. Work in Progress, the little Scotland romance.
Oh, I think that was part of the book club thing I sent you.
Yeah. Okay. And that's cute. I'm only a couple chapters into that so far, but it's such it's like so easy to read, and especially like with this like cold, damp weather that we've had here in Texas. It's like, I don't know, it's really sweet. And I'm like, oh. And yeah, you were talking about the literary tour, and I was like, you're right. That is like really me. I would love to do that.
I just got notified your 3rd book is coming at some point.
Oh my gosh, I love it. This is honestly the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's still another month, but yeah, it was from December. This does deal with like a teenage daughter that calls a romance radio station to like try to get her mom to start dating again.
Aww.
And so like the romantic interest is the guy that was like is the radio host of this like romance show. I think it's based on Sleepless in Seattle, or like it's inspired by. So it's inspired by that. So if you like that movie, then maybe you will actually like this. Then I've seen actually a lot of TikToks about it. So it is. I feel like this could be turned into a movie, but will it be turned into a movie because one already exists very similar?
Well, maybe they'll revamp it.
I don't know. Yeah, with like the new, because it was like Tom Hanks and
oh my gosh, Meg Ryan.
Yeah. I feel like before the romance movies, they weren't always like a Brad Pitt or like a Chris
Evans.
other Chris. Yeah, like they weren't like
any other Chris.
Yeah, they weren't like that. Just like you look at them and they're just like so beautiful.
Yeah.
They were like attractive, like uniquely attractive in a sense. You know, like the movie with what's that other movie with her?
When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah,
And it's Billy Crystal.
yeah, yeah. Which I feel like those type of movies don't exist as much as they did before, or like wouldn't do as well. Like they go for like the heartthrob type person for every role, but I do think there's like something nice about like not everything feeling so picture perfect, like more real romance, because not everyone's gonna look like a model.
Yeah. Yeah, I really
so
like
cute as that.
I like also the one with Tom Hanks and I think Meg Ryan again. The one where like
You Got Mail.
Like, yes.
Yes, I love You Got Mail. That's such a good
too.
movie. Every time it's on, I will stop and watch that.
Me too. And like when Harry Met Sally and When You Got Mail, those are like quintessential like fall winter movies. Like there's just such a vibe about them.
Yeah, I don't love Sleepless in Seattle as much.
Yeah. It doesn't have like an autumnal vibe.
I just didn't feel like the vibe between them as much in that movie, as much as like You Got Mail type of thing.
Yeah.
But Divine Rivals kind of has
it does.
You Got Mail vibes.
It's what is that called? An epistemology where it's like written in letters. Like the whole thing's not written in letters, but there's a lot of letter writing back and forth.
So it's similar vibes where like they fall in love on paper, but also in real life.
Yeah. Instead of like anonymous emailing, it's anonymous typing.
Yeah, through a magic typewriter. So it is similar vibes. So everything is kind of reused, but it was good. So yes, I would recommend The First Time Caller and The Nightshade so far, I think, but we'll see. I'm not usually into like dark romance-ish. We'll gotta find stuff to read. Stay tuned. We'll see what I read next week, what I fall into. So, but going to the chapters, so chapter 13, I feel like it's so relatable, and like we've talked about, Rebecca Ross speaks about grief so well in her books, where she just talks about like she goes back to the office and her life is irrevocably altered, but everything is the same. Like everything's where she left it, but like her life is so different and everyone's still going on about their day, but like she's going back to the office like a completely different person because her mom passed away. And I feel like the way that she wrote it just feels so relatable.
Yeah.
Like you go back to the world, but it doesn't feel like you belong there anymore because someone's missing.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't get it. Like why does nothing else feel different? Minus like everything feels different at the same time. It's just a really weird feeling, and I feel like she just writes it so well.
Yeah, and I'm happy to like hear, not to like skip ahead a little, but like she doesn't tell anybody at the office that her mom passed, and she's saying like she was ill. And you know, I kind of always thought back to like when I lost my dad, on whether like how do you communicate that to the people in your office? Like I just went through this like, life altering, really personal, tragic event, and like do you put that in an email? Or I don't know, do you like set up a meeting and be like, hello everybody, like I'm here to make an announcement? But to hear like she did the same thing of like, I'm not going to tell anybody, this is like my burden to bear. I was like, oh, so I'm glad this is a universal griefy feeling of like, you don't know what to do in a work setting with your grief.
Yeah. Very authentic feelings, especially like, well, so a few things that was really hard in here was that made it even worse was that she got assigned to write her mom's obituary.
That was rough.
And so she was sitting writing it, and it's like she couldn't figure out what to write. And then, you know, she even like mentioned before she got there, like she overslept. She was late because like grief pulled her into this deep, dark slumber. And like that's just like the way she talked about it was so like it just was so real. It was like you have to, I feel like she had to either study grief really well or experienced it to be able to like describe it so well. And it just relatable. Like the people don't always care. Like she lost the job to Kit because she didn't submit her paper, because it's like you obviously don't care about writing a paper or like writing an article when someone dies, like, especially your mom, in such a tragic way. And her boss like didn't care. Kit even tried to defend her and be like, no, it's not fair, give her another chance. And he's just like, why didn't you tell me? And she's like, well, I didn't want to cry in front of you, I don't want your pity. Like, and that's such a relatable feeling. And I feel like we talked about that. It's like you don't want people to just like pity you, but also you need some support, like you need help. Like, but it's like hard to ask for it or want that. Like you don't want people to just look at you with sad eyes sometimes, but it's also like you need some like leeway, some help. So I definitely get that feeling of like you don't want people to pity you, but at the same time it's like you're not okay, so you need help.
Especially it with our episode with Rebecca Finegloss on our Two Girls with Grief podcast. It was such a fascinating conversation on your grief in the workplace. And it just like really serendipitously matched up with this, because this kind of puts it into perspective of the kind of professionalism and how you can't express these, like you have to stay very like, I don't know, professional, but it's kind of like this dampened down version of who you are outside of work. And that episode with Rebecca, I've really loved just because she embraces that. She's like, you're a human with human feelings. And that episode would have done Iris really well.
Yeah, it would have. It definitely would have. And I feel like the only other part things in this chapter was kind of mentioned that she knew when Kit arrived at the office and or like when he showed up, because she felt like there was like a tie between them. And so you're already like feeling there's like a buildup, and the fact that Kit is like, no, I don't want the job, like I want it to be fair, and he's the one that read her obituary, and she was just like, you don't read obituaries. And that's what she started thinking, oh, does he just read my writing? The obituaries he doesn't care about, but he cares about reading my writing. And her starting to kind of put together like, does he like me? Does he care about me? Kind of putting their pieces of their romance together. And the last thing that Kit said to her that I thought was like an interesting quote, because she just was like, I'm leaving, I'm quitting. She resigned. And I think that's also like a pivotal moment that we should address, is like, she was just like, I'm not doing this, and she quit.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful moment. And also just like grief does change you. Something that you wanted before might feel like not worth it like anymore, or just like what you want to do. And she was just like, I want something different. So I think that is a very relatable grief thing to do as well, just like make a big decision because like you need some change.
Yeah, 100%. And she left in like such an iconic way, just like, all right, I'm packing up my stuff and I'm leaving. I mean, is it the right way to do it? I don't know. I'm not here to make judgments on that, but like I love the like strength of her as a character and being like, well, I know what I really want. I want to go out to this war and I want to find my brother. And so that's what I'm going to do. Like nothing else is holding me here. So why am I still here?
Yeah. The last line that Kit said to her, which was, what would you do if you could take back the words that you gave her? Continue to pretend like that your life was fine while you were with us day by day, even as you grieved by night. Would you even know yourself after a week had passed, a month, a year? And I was just like, that's a good line. And we've talked about this, I think, more on our grief podcast, of just at some point you stop knowing who you are. When you're just sad and you're just going through the motions and you're just trying to continue on, that like, you can shield yourself from other people, and you can shield yourself from even like growing as a person or getting to know yourself, this new version of yourself, because you're grieving in silence by yourself. And I was just like, reading these chapters, is like, they just know grief. They know.
I know, back to the point when you were talking about the dark slumber, I was like, ooh, that's really like a true griefy moment, because like when you're in so much pain and you're grieving, that's the only way you kind of can escape it. And I think that's why a lot of grievers sleep a lot, because already the emotions are exhausting, but then it's just like there's no way to escape your grief other than sometimes sleeping to avoid it.
In the next chapter, it wasn't too much going on. She just was trying to pack up her apartment, and she said there was like too many memories. She said everything was as it was when her mom was there, and it was just hard to decide what to leave. I know she like picked up a necklace that was her mom's from her stuff, and just like her typewriter and a few things. And I think it's also a hard thing. It's like what matters, you know, like what truly matters for you to take away from something for a place you might not ever see again. You know, she doesn't really know. But she does write to Kit, who she doesn't know is Kit, before she leaves, and just tells him that she's leaving. And she doesn't know if like it will be the like what's really connecting them. So she just leaves it. And he writes back, but she's just like, no, it might anchor me to this place if I read it. So he just left that letter in her closet because she's like, I don't want that to like change my mind or make me think anything. But she told him that she was leaving. So not much in that chapter, but I feel like it was a good like pivotal chapter. And then chapter 15, we focus more on Kit and how he's realizing like his life feels hollow without Iris and like how much he really meant to him and him addressing his own feelings. And he told his dad like he doesn't want to get married. He doesn't want to go forward with that marriage. And he finds out he's like making bombs or something like that for Dakra. Did we say like Docker?
Dockery?
Dakra.
Yeah, I have no clue.
And something that was messed up. And then he's like, I don't want to be involved in that. I don't want to support that, whatever. And he was just like, oh, well, you already disappointed your mom. You don't want to do it again. Because he was blaming like the sister's death on him, which is just such a messed up thing to do.
Whoa.
So it just shows why Kit is like he is, because his dad especially like doesn't treat him well and treats him, basically fuels his insecurities about his sister's death and his sadness for it, and like uses it against him, which is like evil.
Yeah.
It's evil.
And like, how could you do that against the memory of like your dead daughter? Like,
yeah.
That's so awful.
And so then the rest of the chapter is like when Iris actually goes to apply to be a war correspondent, and that's when she finds out what her typewriter is, and it's magic. They said it was like made in a magical street with a magical somebody that could like magic, I don't know, could like do something with magic and on a magical house. And it was for this like this rich girl named Alouette. I think she was sick, so she couldn't see her friends, and so it was like her 3 best friends that had these 3 typewriters. And so she finds out like that's the reason why she's been able to talk to this person, is because that person has that other typewriter. And she never knew the reason for the typewriter. It was her grandma's. And so she finds out like the magic behind it. And that's when she's like, okay, so maybe I can talk to this person still, because it's not the closet. It's just a typewriter.
Yeah, it's funny because this magic system is so loose. Like,
yeah, you don't really get it.
Yeah, if you're a fantasy lover, don't come into this expecting a hard magic system, because you really have to kind of suspend some belief around the fantasy element, which I like. I kind of like a magic system you don't really understand.
Magic is that way, right? Kind of a sense it's like that mystery.
Chaotic and mysterious, and like clearly the people, like I don't know if any of them wield any magic. This is such a fun book because here we are like merging mythology of like a made up mythology of gods mixed in with like a loose magic system that you're not quite sure how it works. But then also like this like dark academic layer, also with this like wartime, like Saving Private Ryan vibe. But like there's
a lot of different stuff.
It's kind of giving, also, I really like the setting and like the atmosphere they're in. It seems like it's always raining, but I'm imagining like cobblestone streets. It gives me like 40s vibe a little bit, like kind of just like of another time, of another era, but not of this world. Like none of these places exist in real life.
It doesn't feel very modern.
Yeah, it feels very like antiquated and maybe like a little steampunky. I don't know, but it's such an interesting display of the time period we're in and the setting it's in. So I think it's really fun, very different.
Yeah. And so chapter 16 is basically like her taking the train to be a correspondent. And that's when they first find like the war is closer. Then they get told, and that there's a lot more going on that they get told, because like at some point the train stops. That's where she meets Addie, like the other correspondent. And I think the only other important thing that I noticed from this chapter was like Addie basically said like, I don't want to wake up when I'm 74 only to realize I haven't lived. And that was like part of the reason why she wanted to do this correspondent role. So I think that's always like a good reminder. It's like, you don't want to look back and think that you just didn't take any chances and that you didn't live your life. I think there's a lot of good messages in this book.
Yeah, that's such a mindset shift. I think when you don't know anyone who's passed, you know you'll die someday, but you have this like eternal outlook on life, and that, oh yeah, I'll just die when I'm old. But then you lose somebody at a young age, or they die at a young age, and you realize, like, wow, at any moment, my life might stop existing. And
Yeah.
it like really puts emphasis on every second and every minute that you're alive to just make it something impactful to you, and like to really strive for your passions and to do good work in the world. That line also stood out to me, in that I think we sometimes get into like the hustle and bustle of stuff and forget that like our time is limited, and we have to really put emphasis on it and live a good life worth living.
Yeah. And it's so important to do that. And sometimes you need a book to remind you of that.
I need that reminder sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely need that reminder. So chapter 17 is basically they arrive at the location, and it's a bed and breakfast, but it looks abandoned, and it looks like it's boarded up, and it doesn't look like a B&B shit. It looks questionable. But they go in anyway, and that's where they meet Marisol, who's just like seems like such a lovely, warm character, and just like very welcoming, and like
It is. I love her.
like feeds them and just takes care of them, and then that's where they learn in this chapter just how bad the war actually is and how close it is. And she talks about like the different sirens, and there's like say like wyverns. How do you pronounce that?
Like it's kind of a weird word.
It's in a bunch of different books, but I just don't remember how to pronounce it. And then there's like other beast things and stuff. There's just like you realize about all these different things that like they're told don't exist anymore, but then they obviously do. They're just not being told from it, and it's just like they're getting hid so much information of what's actually going on.
Yeah, I think like when reading this book, we're starting off in this like kind of old-timey city, and then like now I'm like this really feels like I'm on a war front. Like the way she's just writing different things about war and the blockades and the battalions, and just like the language used to talk about war and the strategies they have to do, and like how they have to like hunker down when the sirens go off. And it's like amazing that, okay, in the first part we were in this magical city, old-timey, and now it's like this feels so much more realistic to something current, that, you know, like something I imagine in movies.
Yeah, the book paints the images very well, I'd say.
Yeah.
So that was just pretty short, and it was basically like she went to the infirmary. She's like, is her brother here? Seeing the first soldiers, and she ends up just writing a bunch of letters for loved ones of people that are in war. And I think one important thing for the chapter was no one regretted joining the war, but they did want to send messages to their loved ones. So they did think it was like a worthy cause.
I thought that was sweet. Like she's using this power of her typewriter that she doesn't really quite understand it, but she's like, oh, I know somebody's on the other side receiving my letters. Like I'll give them my letters and they can send them out in the city, versus like on the war front where all their letters are getting like lost.
Oh, sorry, I skipped a chapter. So chapter 18, that was chapter 19. But so chapter 18, I think there's a few important things. So she can't sleep while she's her first night there, and she decides to write to Kit, who she doesn't know is Kit, and he replies in like 2 minutes, and they just kind of do a little back and forth, and she tells him that she's at war, all this stuff. So he finally like finds out where she is, and he asks her like, how are you? And the quote that I think is important for this chapter is, she says, the grief is still heavy within me, and I think it would be dragging me to a pit if I wasn't so distracted. Some moments I feel okay, and then the next I'll be struck by a wave of sadness that makes it hard to breathe. I'm learning how to navigate it, though, just like you once said to me. And I think it's just so nice. Like their grief supports for each other. Like they've both been through something really hard, and I think there is such a connecting piece when you get to know other people that are also grieving and how they handle it. And I think how they're open with it. It just makes you closer to people when you like share that type of bond. And you definitely see that, like he's being that person for her that's like helping her navigate this new fresh grief that's really hard for her to do. Also, she's like, you know, alone, like she doesn't have a support system, so that makes it even harder.
Yeah, and literally in like an atmosphere of death and grief and people worried about their loved ones. And we'll get to this, I think, in another chapter where like there's people dying around her. And it's just like it puts it in such a different context. Like you're you're struggling with your own grief, and then you're surrounded by death at the same time. Like what?
Yeah.
Like, it makes me think of like, how do soldiers in war do this when they like watch their comrades like fall, but you're also surrounded by it as well. Like that's such a, I don't know if I have the mental capacity for that.
I don't think I'd be able to do that. I don't think it would have. Yeah, I think that it's a great strength. I think it also shows her like strength as like a person. Like she's trying to help and
Yeah.
trying to find her brother, and she's willing to like go into this really hard space, even though she's still having a hard time.
Yeah, and this is in a later chapter, but her mentioning like her and her letters writing to him saying, I don't think I'm strong enough for this. I don't think I'm courageous enough for this. Like I'm looking at these soldiers
Yeah.
willing to sacrifice themselves for this better cause to save other people. And she's like, I can't do this. And him to write back, and he's like, the fact that you're there and doing something is more than most. And that it takes courage and it takes sacrifice to even, because I mean, she can risk, like, it's kind of like written in her contract when she becomes the war correspondent of like, we could die like on the job. Like she assumes that.
Yeah. Like they don't know, but it's good she has the support, even if it's like through this person that she doesn't know is actually Kit via you got mail type of scenario. But I feel like the important things in like chapter 20 is he gets more of the end of the story from his nan, and like the second half, and basically we find out that Emma put everyone to sleep with her harp. Is it a harp? I think it's a harp.
Yeah.
And she put everyone to sleep and she escaped. So you kind of get more backstory of like why this war is actually happening.
Yeah, and the mythology is so interesting when they drop in more details about why this war is even happening.
Yeah, and then it ends with like her hearing her first siren, and then she has to scramble, and she's like typing last message to him, like trying to get something out, and of course it makes Kit worried because he gets a message like she has to go and something happened, and he bumps into his nan because he can't sleep, and his nan basically calls him out because he knows that he's writing to Iris, and he tries to play coy like, oh, I don't really know her. And he's like, don't lie to your grandma. And she just like thinks that they would have gotten along because she was best friends with her grandma. And his nan's like, are you going to let her slip away? Like, you're just going to let her go? And I think an important thing that she says to him is like, are you going to let your father write your story or will you? I think that was like a really important moment for Kit to be like, oh, I don't want my dad to write my story.
Yeah, that was like a chilling part of him realizing how controlled he is by his dad, which is just so sad. Like, for war profiteering, like that's why you're gonna like essentially sell off your son. Like, it's just odd.
Doesn't seem like he cares for him anyway.
Yeah, they look a bad guy.
Yeah, and I think a like last sweet thing, but not for their romance, was in this chapter they talk about Marisol gardens, and it's not easy to keep a garden in those conditions because like the hounds and there's all those different things that are going out there, so it's not easy because it gets tripped on often. But Keegan, her wife, likes the garden, and that's kind of like how they fell in love, so she like keeps doing it even though like waiting for her to come back. I think it's been like 6 months since she came back or something, so she still does it as like hope, like making sure she's okay and doing that for her. And then the chapter just ends with Iris asking like Kit if she wants to meet him.
And and you're just over here being like, what would you say? Like, you like that's a part where you get giddy, like you're swinging your feet.
Yeah.
And like, oh my god,
like it's so sweet. Yeah, and I think it's also a pivotal point for Iris where she's like putting herself out there.
Yeah,
and just like allowing herself to like potentially get hurt or like I think that's a big piece. And they talk about like letting some of their armor down. I think that's kind of an interesting piece of this, of like she's letting some of her armor down. For that, and she's letting this person in.
Yeah, and I think with the realization of war is when she's like, life is so short, like why waste time, like why play coy if I might not even like be alive tomorrow, who knows. That bravery in her is like really shining through, I think, in this setting of being the war correspondent.
Yeah. I wrote down these days I think anything is possible, Iris, and I think that was Addie, but I don't remember why. Do you remember that line?
Did I flag it?
Like what? Chapter 22.
Or was it about? No, it's not about the secret, is it?
It was because she said, do you think it's possible to fall in love with a stranger? Iris asked Addie if she thinks it's possible to fall in love with a stranger because she's falling in love with Kit via these type messages. And they're getting to know each other. And that's when Addie tells her, like, I think anything is possible because, like, basically this is a crazy life. They never knew all this stuff was actually happening. There's all these monsters and magic going on that they didn't know still existed. So she's like, I don't know, everything and anything's possible. And the rest of the chapter is just like letters between her and Kit. She like asks for his name and he says Carver, which is his middle name.
We finally learned what the C means.
Yeah. He feels like more connected. Like I have a name and I have someone to address the letters to. And so it's just kind of showing more of like building up of their connection and their romance.
Yeah, which also introduces, well, at least with the introduction of Carver, like he even says it. He's like, is she going to feel like betrayed when she finds out it's me? And I didn't like say my real name that she would know me as. And so like, that's obviously something we're going to have to like come across later in the book.
Yeah.
Like, what's that going to unfold?
You're going to find out eventually. And then, so chapter 23, there's just an influx of soldiers. The medics are like, you're bringing people that I can't save. And they're like, just give them a peaceful place to pass away. It was just a sad part. And then also, like, it's moving really fast. So you're like, oh, I can take one of you war correspondents to go right away for 7 days. And I think they did like rock, paper, scissors type thing. And Addie ended up going first. And so you just see like how fast paced it is. Like now you're off to war and everything's changing really quickly. So you see kind of like how fast paced this environment is for them.
Yeah.
How scary it is.
Yeah. And you're like, are we going to see Addie again? Because like she's going to the.
Yeah, you don't know.
And you're like, oh my God, she finally makes a friend. And I'm like,
yeah,
she needed a friend.
A true friend.
She needed a friend.
Yeah.
I was like, don't take her friend away. She just got
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And then it switches over to like what Kit's doing. And he basically is forced to go to lunch with his fiance. His dad just like comes to his office like, you're going to lunch. And he finds out like his fiance is basically like, it's for the betterment of our families. We don't have to sleep together. We don't have to sleep in the same room until we have kids. Like all this stuff where it's like, she's just very like, this is my life and this is what I'm doing. And he's just like, oh, you don't care. And he's like, our family's making bombs. And she said it's not bombs. So I don't know what exactly it is. But she's just kind of reserved. Like she's already like, this is just how it's going to be. Like,
yeah. And very transactional and very much like, you're going to live your life and I'm going to live mine. And we just have to do this for the family. And he's like, but don't you want your freedom?
Yeah. And he finds out like she's in love with someone else. So like it's just like this thing where it's like, oh, this is a loveless marriage. And he starts spiraling thinking like, I deserve this. And then he stumbles across Iris's article. And I feel like it always in this book, which I like, is like when they're kind of spiraling, they get a letter from each other or something happens. Like they end up stopping each other from spiraling at like the perfect time.
Sweet perspective. Yeah. I didn't even notice that.
And so I think it happened with Iris too and like Roman when they're like kind of spiraling in these chapters. It's like they always receive like a letter or something. And so the same with this where he like sees it and it's like ink written Iris or something. And he reads the article and he's just like, it's a time where it's like, maybe I don't deserve this because like Iris is doing this big thing and I can do something big. And I know there was like a good quote. Let me find it. I wrote it down.
I flagged their last little letter that he writes to her.
Oh yeah, that's the same one.
About being strong. You should read it.
No, you should do this one because I've been reading all the quotes. Read it. We flagged the same one.
Yeah, I flagged it because I was like, oh my God, that is just like, I mean, it speaks so much more to grief, I think, like woven into the context of this. So from Iris, she says, Dear Carver, I'm sorry I haven't written to you in a while. These days have been long and hard here, and they've made me realize that I don't think I'm brave enough or strong enough for this. I don't think my words will ever be able to describe how I feel right now. I don't think my words will ever be able to describe the things I've seen, the people I've met, or the way war creeps like a shadow. How am I supposed to write articles about this when my words and my experience are so terribly inadequate? When I myself feel so terribly inadequate. Love, Iris. And I was like, oh my God, that's heavy.
Yeah. Also, I love the transparency. I feel like it's just been this year where I'm like, okay, I'm sad. It's okay to say that. Or I'm this and I'm okay to say that. And I think there's something special where you can say those things out loud to somebody and feel comfortable saying that. And I think that's just like kind of showing like the bond that they're really building.
Yeah. And like his response back, I mean, enough for
that
both of us to flag
yeah.
it. Yeah. So he says, Dear Iris, I don't think you realize how strong you are because sometimes strength isn't swords or steel and fire, as we are so often made to believe. Sometimes it's found in the quiet, gentle places. The way you hold someone's hand as they grieve, the way you listen to others, the way you show up day after day, even when you are wary or afraid or simply uncertain. That is strength, and I see that in you. As for your bravery, I can honestly tell you I don't know anyone of your mettle. Who else packs up everything and leaves the comfort of their home to become a war correspondent? Not many. I admire you in more ways than one. Keep writing, and I'll find words you need to share. They are already within you, even in the shadows, hiding like jewels. Yours, C.
I just love that because I am such a sucker for what's that quote, like to be loved is to be seen.
Yeah.
I'm such a sucker for those type of things, and I just feel like that's so much what they are. Like he really sees, and he has more of an insight because he like knows her in real life
Yeah.
too, and but it is where like people see those things about you that you don't give yourself credit for, or that you don't even stop to think about anymore. And it's nice to have those people that see you and see your strength and see the good things that you do. So when I read that, I was like, he's so sweet. I love him.
Yeah, that was a killer of a letter. Way to go, Rebecca Ross. That was a good one.
She really writes this stuff well.
Yeah.
Pulling at the heartstrings.
She really does. Yeah, absolutely. And like the character development so far. I mean, we're only about halfway through the book, and like there's already so much dynamic character development between the two characters.
Yeah, and you know them so well already.
Yeah.
Like you're attached to the characters. So in chapter 24, the last chapter that we're going over today, Addie returns from war, and I think this is like a bonding moment for them. They're just like looking out into the sky on the roof, and they share secrets, and Iris tells her about how she likes Kit, but she also likes this like mystery writer, and kind of explains that whole situation, and she shares like her secrets of that. And Addie shares her secrets about playing the harp and how her dad supported her and like put her in the basement, and how it was illegal because of Enva and they didn't allow that. But that was like something she was really good at, and her dad supported her and kept her safe with that hobby. And yeah, it just shows like the state of the world they're living in, that would even have to be a thing, that like for her to continue with this skill that she had, they had to like build a special basement for her and like keep it soundproof for her to be able to play it because of Enva. So it shows a little bit more of like kind of the fact that the gods have had on their life now.
Yeah, this was like one of the more eye-opening chapters of this world building. And I flagged like partially one paragraph about Addie talking about kind of like her father making these sacrifices for her to play the harp. And her saying that my father was my only audience. And while it seemed like our lives had been put on hold, he told me to keep my chin up, to not lose hope or let fear steal my joy. Which is also like, you can only write that if you've experienced grief.
Yeah, I just feel like she has to. I haven't looked it up. Like Rebecca Ross, who have you lost? Like we did with
Rebecca
Emily
Ross,
Henry.
please respond to a podcast if you're curious.
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about it here, but how movies portray happy endings with grief. Like you don't see a real depiction of grief in movies in a lot of books because there's always like a happy ending in a way of like it ends peacefully. Yeah, and you don't see that, like, yeah, maybe they have got into a more stable place with your life, or you've hit a higher point through your grief, but that grief is always there and it's always with you. But I do think that the grief here is very real, because also Kit lost his sister years ago, and he's talking about it and the effects that it's had on him. And I think it's also powerful. It's like the male character is sharing this and the impacts on him, just because there's also like less guys that speak about grief. So I feel like that was important too. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where like she just had to with how she talks about it.
Yeah. And another thing to allude to all the world building is that Addie reveals that it's because of the music, it's because of the goddess Inva playing the harp, that she's like opening people to be aware of the truth. What is the truth? I guess we'll find out later in the book. But that the town that they were in previously, that the city of Oath, banded music almost to hide the truth from the citizens. And she's like, they need music now more than ever. They need it for joy, and they need it to like find the truth of what is going on in the town. And I just love that one little line of like, Iris is like, well, what do you do? Like, what are we going to do? And she's like, you and I, Addie, will have to write about it. And so like taking on that accountability and ownership to tell the truth back to the city that is clearly trying to like ignore it and hide from it and not want to face the reality that it's on their doorsteps.
Yeah. And it shows like how strong the two characters are, like that they're just like, we're going to write these stories and we're going to make it get out. There's like really important pieces and building blocks in these chapters.
Yeah. So good. I love this little like stretch of chapters. We're getting into it. We're getting into the nitty gritty. I'm loving it. I'm like
major like plot changes and locations, and you're like in the war. It's not just like theoretical, like you're in it. She's a woman of action. So the next chapters to read through is 25-35. I feel like that sounds nice. We'll read that. And I feel like these are going to be, I have read the book before, I think a couple years ago. But yeah, I think it's just going to be some good chapters.
I'm excited because like we're on the cusp. I was like, man, I like reading. We know she's going to go deeper into war.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for her? What does that mean for the relationship? Like, what does that mean for this whole state of everything? Because she's clearly a bigger character to all of this than just her being a little journalist.
Yeah. So yeah, you find out in the next chapters, or not everything, but it's a good chunk of the.
Super eager, super excited. Cannot wait to find out more.
So stay tuned, and we'll have the next episode out on next. So audio, if you're listening to this, it's every Thursday, and for YouTube, it's every Friday. So you can watch watch the video version if you want to see our faces talk about this in real life. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.